My name is Lauren Lee McCarthy, and I am a mixed race Chinese American woman. I have short dark hair. I'm wearing a brown shirt, and I'm sitting in my favorite place, which is my studio. I'm really excited to introduce this panel today. Just as a bit of background, I kind of came into this scenario. I'm coming from the P5.js project, which is an open source library for making creative work online and learning to code. So it's used a lot by artists and designers, but also a lot in educational settings. And so the people in this panel I met either through that project or they're working in communities that are very adjacent. And I think what's unique and special about this is that all three of the panelists today are artists and designers, but they're also tool makers themselves. And so they're going to be talking to you about the different tools and projects that they're working on related to thinking about XR on the web. So yeah, I guess the only other thing I'll say is that it feels really exciting to be doing this panel right now because I know WebXR is a standard that's kind of quickly evolving, but also given our COVID situation, there have been so many questions around just how to do everything remotely. And I think all three of them are addressing that in really interesting ways. So the format is going to be that each person will give a short presentation, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions and discussion. So if you have any questions while it's going, you can throw them into the chat, and I'll do my best to weave that into the conversation. Or at the end, you can also use the wave hand or raise hand feature to ask your question directly. So we didn't really decide on an order, but I'm going to call on Evelyn first. I hope that's okay. Evelyn Eastmond is a multidisciplinary artist and researcher exploring trauma and embodiment through sculpture and installation. She's been an artist in residence at the Banff Center for the Arts and Creativity and at the Gushel Studio Residency Program in Canada, and has taught digital media at the Rhode Island School of Design. She's also held positions as a researcher and affiliate at Y Combinator Research, the MIT Media Lab, and the Center for Arts, Design, and Social Research. And currently she's a senior design researcher at Microsoft, and she's going to be talking to you about some of her work there. So welcome, Evelyn. And if you can describe yourself and your slides as you're going along, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Evelyn Eastmond, she, her. I'm Hispanic woman, and I'm wearing a green shirt, and I'm in my guest room. For my slides, I'm going to read from a script, and the video that I have will have some captioning. So I'm gonna share my screen. And go to my slide. Give it a second. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Evelyn Eastmond, and I'm here to share a little bit today about my experiences with WebXR and its use in remote art education. In my current position as a design researcher at Microsoft, I'm running user studies in embodied spatial technologies such as VR and AR. I'm curious to see how these technologies enable active learning and active participation in ways that traditional 2D media such as PowerPoint slides, images, and videos cannot. I'm also curious to see if we can open up what online sharing means and if spatial media allows new ways of connecting people that current social media doesn't, and how or whether this opens up new pathways to accessibility, openness, and inclusivity. Earlier this year, a professor and colleague from an art school asked me if I could work with her students who suddenly went remote due to the pandemic. So I created for her students a studio space in AltSpace VR, which is a non-WebXR social VR tool from Microsoft, and I populated it with the students' works. Using this space and also some donated headsets from Oculus, the students were able to meet and talk about their objects in a way that Zoom wasn't suited for. I'll quickly share a 2-minute video showing one student presenting her 3D sculpture. The video was taken from the viewpoint of a guest who was interacting with the sculpture while the student talked. So hopefully this works.
Yeah. Hi. I'm Heather. I am a second-year graduate student in printmaking. So this is my final semester. Coming into this, I kind of spent most of the semester with the intersection between my shoe and the ground, specifically soil, as kind of my point of inspiration. The challenge of moving into VR space really made me kind of rethink what it is about that shoe to soil relationship that is so important. And I think it is really about like my relationship to place, how I relate my body to the environment that it's in. So I think a lot of the past couple of weeks I've spent trying to figure out how I relate to this space in particular. It is just exciting to be able to explore an object and how it creates space at a certain scale in this digital world.
It goes beyond site specific to something more about your interaction with place. And I enjoy the fact that, I've actually been enjoying just watching people go in and out, more so than going in myself. All right, thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you.
So back to the slides. As a result of that quick experiment in the spring, the students said that they felt they could find a sense of connection to their peers and their artworks again, and also regained a sense of community that Zoom wasn't really offering. Some of them even went as far as to say that they felt their tuition value had been slightly redeemed by having a more embodied remote classroom experience. So in this fall semester that we're in now, we decided to push the work a bit further. However, the social VR tool from Microsoft that we used in the spring was difficult to use and generally not very accessible. We also wanted the students to be able to easily create their own environment suited to their visions and artworks, instead of having me create their studios like I did in the spring, to see if that opened up any new possibilities for them. So we decided to switch to a social VR tool based on WebXR from Mozilla called Mozilla Hubs. We chose it because it's an open source web tool that is non-proprietary, and because it's based on WebXR, inherently spatial with built-in body and head tracking. It's also truly multi-platform, including not just headsets, but also smartphones, and anyone can join with any computer or device that can run a web browser to use Hubs in a semi-spatial way. It's very easy to use. To add media, you just drag and drop it in, or use their built-in tool called Spoke. Visiting spaces is very accessible. All you need is a web link, kind of like a website, and there's an active community on Discord for learning more. We're only halfway through the semester, but we're already seeing some advantages to the inclusion of the VR classroom experience, in addition to the limited in-person meetings the students are having. Here's some pictures that show what the current in-person studio critiques are like, with social distancing, masks, and limited outdoor table space to show artworks. So here's a student who's working on a project based on a bag of cookies, and she made a copy of it that's soft. And this is her presenting it in person. Here's another student with an artwork based on the scent of lavender from a plant that she's been taking care of during quarantine. And here's a student with some shiny balloons in a lattice structure. I'll finish by showing a short montage of some of the VR spaces those same students have been able to make in just a few weeks using Mozilla Hubs, with minimal prior VR experience. I'll let the video play. It has no audio, as I talk over it, sharing what we hope to learn next. So far, the students have been able to create rooms, landscapes, and custom architecture to give a sense of place to their works. They've also been able to play with scale, mixed media installation, and participatory and interactive art, which all would have been much more limited if it had been done in person. What's interesting to me is not just the enabling of the spatial experience for students who are currently on campus, but also for those who haven't been able to return to the US. To me, that points towards future possibilities of something like global art classrooms and places of digitally mediated embodied connection. But for now, in the next couple of months, our goal is to collect data about the student classroom experience and hopefully incubate some new tools to help foster even more in-depth VR explorations. There are questions here to explore, not just about free and open access to embodied media that can hopefully open up new conversations once people are connecting at a distance and connecting during pandemics, but there's also questions about Microsoft's involvement in this space. As some of you might know, Microsoft owns GitHub, one of the main websites for managing open source software. And one thing I'm personally wondering is if Microsoft wants to support not just the future of the open web for developers, but if it also wants to support the future of the open web for spatial and embodied making as well. And then my last slide, or just the same slide. I'm currently learning about the politics involved in making the case for that support from Microsoft from within at the company, and finding it interesting and challenging given that I have little background in corporate strategy or business in general. So that's why I'm very excited to be here on this panel today to explore these ideas with others who are thinking and creating in the same WebXR space. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Evelyn. So we're going to move right to the next presentation, and this is Valencia James, who is a Barbadian freelance performer, maker, and researcher interested in the intersection between dance, theater, technology, and activism. She believes in the power of the arts to inspire change. In 2013, Valencia co-founded the AI-AM project, which explores the application of machine learning and artificial intelligence in dance. The project has been presented at several international forums, including multiple TEDx appearances. And in 2020, Valencia was invited to moderate a panel on AI, art, and social justice at SIGGRAPH. She's also currently a rapid response for a Better Digital Future Fellow at the IBEAM Center for the Future of Journalism. So go ahead, Valencia.
Unmute. Yes, thank you, Lauren, for this wonderful opportunity to share my work. And just to be in community with all of you at the W3C forum and community. Thank you so much. I'm just gonna go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see that? Yeah, okay. So yeah, so thank you for that introduction, Lauren. So I'm from Barbados, and my main medium is dance. I'm not a coder, so this is still quite a new medium for me. The idea of XR and working digitally. I just want to say that my work is really informed by that tension that I have felt in my relationship with society. I'm coming from Barbados, so I grew up in the remnants of British colonialism. And later I spent a decade in Hungary dealing with constant stereotypes and othering. It was a very positive experience, but it was also had that element to it. But my approach to XR has been quite unintentional. It's more about, it's led by this curiosity and a sense of urgency to do with extending the limits of my creativity and just interrogating what that means in performance and in creation in the studio. And in this slide, you're seeing on the left, this is my first kind of taste for working with dance in virtual environment. This is a project called AIM, which was founded with a group of technologists from Sweden and Hungary in 2013. And this is a slide showing our first prototype of a system that is like dealing with working with an intelligent avatar, thinking of what it would be like maybe to have a duet with myself being like a 3D replica that is informed with my movements data in real time. But this was a start into thinking of machine learning, but also what it means to interact, human-computer interaction. And I found that my movement practice was really more enriched than actually me like being the teacher. It was like I was being taught. But I realized that there was still this awkward divide between my world and that on the screen. So there was always this strange duality between the physical and digital that bothered me. And so in this slide, this is in 2017, the culmination of that project, which was an evening length work called I Am Here. And you're seeing me on the left. I am in a slightly bent over pose in a motion capture suit, and avatar has evolved to kind of a blue, kind of androgynous figure that slightly hovers on the screen. And, you know, it was really strange that, you know, I was looking at empathy between myself and this agent, but, you know, there's always this, this kind of boundary there. And so I was also wondering, how can I supersede that? I took some space from the project. I moved to the US and I had a baby, and I didn't know exactly how I would continue. But then during the lockdown earlier this year, it kind of all came to me, seeing that theaters were closed. I felt like, well, what if I get into the virtual? And so there was where I figured out, okay, WebXR could be a way to bridge that divide, but how? And this is what started the new project that I'm currently researching through iBeam. It's called the Volumetric Performance Toolbox, which is a collaboration between myself, Glowbox, and Sora Bluey. And it started with the question of how can there be new dance creation and performance in a time of COVID? And we wanted to figure out how can any movement artist create an online immersive performance from their own living space for a virtual audience of real people with minimal equipment. And so we've been working on this for the past couple months, and our approach has been first looking at centering Black femme representation in online spaces. And as me being the performer, and I'm sorry, I think I forgot to describe myself at first. So I'm a Black femme with dark brown skin, and I have thin locks, and it's pulled back by a multicolored scarf. And this is really important, that I would be represented in virtual space as I am and not as an avatar, because there's already so much erasure in these spaces. There's not enough representation of Black people in virtual and even performance space for that matter. And so we decided it would be volumetric capture that we would use in our approach. And then the second consideration was accessibility for both audience and also for artists. So for audience, we wanted to use a platform that would be accessible across devices. So we decided to start experimenting with Mozilla Hubs. And we see from Evelyn's work that really is a place, a form that is most accessible. And then for the artists as well, like how can we do this with using minimal equipment, not needing very expensive, heavy duty computers. And so we just started off by trying to make the thing, like how do we make a performance? And so on the left side, you're seeing a picture of my setup in my dining table. Thomas Wester from Glowbox is seen in one computer. We would collaborate via Zoom, and Glowbox sent me equipment to just already start experimenting. So we used an Azure Connect and an Android computer. And on the right, you're seeing some experimenting with DepthKit as I improvise in my living room. And so in this process, I started thinking about not just Black femme representation, but what it would be like to create any virtual space to perform in, and what would it be if these spaces could be a site of reclamation and healing of historically, places that are historically filled with a lot of pain and injustice. So I started thinking about ruins, and that brought me to the SCI-Arc's work where they have photogrammetry scans, and we found one of the Annenberg sugar mill. And this was a big deal because for me, I've been thinking about my connection with my ancestors and finding power and strength from within when, you know, the world is clearly showing like hostility towards Black people. How can this acts reclamation in virtual space be a source of healing. And so I'm going to just pause and show you a proof of concept that we have developed in Mozilla Hubs with some guests as a test audience. So in these sessions, we realized how exhilarating this, at least personally for me as a performer, it was an exhilarating experience. And also the feedback we got from the guests was that there was a sense of liveness and community in this experience. And also that it was, there was also a sense of intimacy. And I felt this is something that was really exciting and has a lot of potential, even beyond, you know, the pandemic. But first of all, that to bring artists in the possibility to create their own world and their own ways to tell their stories still, and then also to connect to audiences. I think the possibilities are huge, and I feel like this is pointing towards just a new art form, maybe, you know, a new way of creating, of sharing, beyond just even just human performers. You know, what if there's interaction with algorithmic dancers, and thinking of AI again as co-creators. So you know, this brings me full circle of thinking about how can I bridge that divide. You know, there can be a possibility for new dances where algorithmic movement and human movement interacts, and also connect with people together for communal art experience. And so this is just the beginning, and we're looking forward to creating and developing a community around this, because it's something that we need a wide range of people to collaborate on. So if you're interested, please do contact me at volumetricperformance@gmail.com. And thank you so much for your attention. Thank you to iBeam and all our collaborators and supporters.
Awesome. Thank you, Valencia. And then lastly, we're going to go to Stalgia. Selja Greg is an artist using simulation to unpack the relationship between emergent change and historical pattern within seemingly metastable social systems. Stalgia also works to build open source software tools for artists as part of the Processing Foundation as a project, and works as a project steward for P5.js and as the initiator of P5.xr. They are dedicated to building tools that interfere with normative restrictions on access and power within software. Stalgia is currently an assistant professor in the Electronic Design and Multimedia Department at the City College of New York, the oldest of CUNY's senior colleges located in Harlem. So welcome, Stalgia.
Hi, thank you for that introduction, Lauren. I am a white person with pinkish hue to my face, and believe it or not, kind of this mullet combination of a bowl cut and pigtails for a haircut. I'm sitting in front of a beige off-white wall with two inexplicably blank Post-it notes on the wall behind me. I'm going to start sharing my screen now. The slide that we're viewing now has the title of the talk, the panel, and has a picture of kudzu taken by Katie Ashdown. As an artist and tool maker, I'm often thinking about how tools articulate a worldview and center a set of values for creative expression. Today, to think through this together, I want to look at two examples of XR pedagogy. First, I want to read an excerpt from the open syllabus of Decolonizing AR by Jesse Escobedo and Selja Grigg. So reading from that. In this closing workshop, we take key takeaways from the readings, Escobar, Massey, Magnalo, Kelly, and engage in a thinking, feeling, making exercise that tackles our basic inquiry, how we might decolonize AR. Using our bodies, personal objects, and physical space, we will individually deconstruct, understand, and prototype our own cosmology and its relationships to others in the pluriverse. Through sensory awareness, performance, and the capturing of our own configuration of reality, we'll take notice of little moments of interaction, feelings, or relationships, seeing how they do or don't translate digitally. Finally, we'll share and discuss what is being left out and what we wish we could include when we digitize our cosmologies into this coming mirror world. We're now viewing a slide with a large landscape orientation picture with a colorful background and multiple smaller pictures inset inside of it. Inside these smaller pictures, which are animated, people are playing with different objects from money to water to AR interfaces. Decolonizing AR was a free multi-week course taught at the Community Arts Space Naval in LA. The course invited participants to think through augmented reality as a site for exploring the history of their city, its colonialist past, and to respond to this by bringing representations of a personal cosmology into a digitally augmented layer upon the city. Also, as an aside, these two have some really cool related projects in the works, and I recommend connecting with them. If you're in the audience, you could drop some relevant info into the chat, and if you aren't, I'll make sure to do it after I'm done speaking. Okay, that was our first example. Moving on to a second pedagogical example. This one is from a tutorial on later.com on how to create custom AR effects and filters with Spark AR. Custom Instagram story filters are no longer limited to the Kylie Jenners and Nikes of the world, giving artists and brands of every size the opportunity to create a viral moment on Instagram. Keep reading to learn more about the future of Instagram and best practices for creating your own Spark AR effects for Instagram, including how AR filters work as a growth hack to getting more followers. Spark AR is a free proprietary tool for making AR filters for Instagram. It is owned by Facebook. Content produced with the tool can only be made public with approval from Facebook and Instagram, which requires agreement to their nested terms of use, which includes clauses that disallow any content that is critical of Instagram or Facebook. The language from this tutorial is not outside the norm for a search like Spark AR tutorial. The intentions and desired outcomes for this tutorial are very much aligned with platform-based personal brand growth. The success of a project made from this tutorial can be measured with metrics such as followers, whereas the success of the prior project was hinged on the creation of new forms of meaning, shared knowledge, and honed criticality. I'm not offering these two starkly contrasting examples only to make a value judgment, but instead to ask how we can create tools that inspire deeper forms of questioning, tools that make people want to learn how to critique power rather than further entrench it. In this is a P5JS logo. It's a magenta square with letters P and the number 5 and an asterisk laid out in the negative space. In 2018, I began making a wrapper library around the WebXR API for P5JS. The wrapper was for P5JS. P5JS is a web library for creative coding. P5 is taught in many schools, especially in courses that serve as an intro to coding for artists and designers. P5 isn't the only library for rendering graphics in a browser, but the community does two things quite well. They consistently direct their aim towards the broad umbrella of accessibility. This happens through initiatives to make the canvas readable to screen readers or through the construction of a fully functional online editor so that coders don't have to set up a local server for development or figure out how to publish to a host. They also propose and refine an understanding of what justice looks like both in and outside of software. We know that tools are not neutral. The P5 community embraces this by taking a stance and articulating a worldview and a definition of justice. This doesn't limit the uses of the tool or the kinds of things that can be made with it, but it does work to orient the meaning of the tool. When people encounter P5, they encounter its sense of justice, and that is made legible to them. We're now viewing a slide with 3 lines of JavaScript code. Each of them says create canvas. The first one has the number 500 passed the first parameter, and the number 500 passed again as the second parameter. In the comment, it says create a canvas with a width of 500 pixels and a height of 500 pixels. The next line says create canvas VR. The comment says creates an immersive VR canvas. And the third line says create canvas AR. And the comment says create an AR canvas. For these reasons, I was excited to bridge P5 to an immersive context. The library I was making was named P5XR. The idea was to make it possible for coders to easily move a sketch from a flat interpretation of the canvas to an immersive one with a single line of code. This would make it possible for someone to make an immersive project that critiques P5XR, denounces me as the project initiator, and questions the entire history of the immersive web with little to no coding experience, and immediately share it with their friends without purchasing web hosting space. I was a bit overly eager to start this project at that point in time, despite the fact that the spec wasn't stabilized. I ended up rewriting the library a number of times as I followed along with the development of the spec by the wonderful Immersive Web working group. The ability to release this project hung in suspension as I waited on the most prominent polyfill to catch up to the spec, and as Mozilla worked to patch iOS's WebXR features through an independent app. During this time, I was seeing the major platforms gaining an increasing hold on what we think of as XR content production tools. This made me aware of the importance of timing. In my experience as an educator, when someone is learning to code by making art, there's this magical wow moment where they realize their own power, their power to do something that seemed impossible moments prior, like put a 3D model in the browser that their friends can see in mobile AR by just going to a URL. Platforms are also aware of this kind of empowerment for creators and the market value it generates. This means that they are working to become the first and only place that people think of when they think of producing content for the immersive web. This begs a question. Why does it matter whether there are alternatives to platform-based tools for XR content production? These tools also prioritize accessibility. Instagram's AR features are available for the lion's share of devices. Spark AR is exceedingly easy to use for someone with no coding experience, much easier than writing and deploying a web app. I would argue that this is why accessibility and ease of use for authoring tools is not enough. Tools that are created by for-profit enterprises will always carry and transmit the priorities of profit and will always work to create feedback loops that concentrate power. In this way, accessibility can actually lead to a homogeneous and centralized web. As toolmakers, we have to compete with this. We have to build and share tools that offer the same accessibility without constraints on content or message, without predefined and rigid definitions of value. When I think about the intent behind accessible tools without constraints or vested interests, I often think of the way that the web was used by the hobbyists in the Web 1.0 era. Of course, there were many problems with access to knowledge and hardware and other resources that overwhelmingly favored privileged groups during this time. But at the same time, there was a different relationship between self-authorship and self-expression, a relationship that appears unique in hindsight. The slide we're looking at is a picture of the artist Olia Lealina. Olia is a white person, femme, wearing a Internet Explorer sweater. To paraphrase artist Olia Lealina, who reflected on Web 1.0 in the essay titled A Vernacular Web, now quoting, "To be blunt, it was bright, rich, personal, slow, and under construction. It was a web of sudden connections and personal links. It was a web of amateurs soon to be washed away by .com ambitions, professional authoring tools, and guidelines designed by usability experts. The amateur web didn't die and it has not disappeared, but it is hidden. Search engine rating mechanisms rank the old amateur pages so low they're almost invisible. Also, new amateur pages don't appear at such amounts as 10 years ago because the www of today is a developed and highly regulated space. You wouldn't get on the web just to tell the world, welcome to my homepage." Now looking at the last slide, it is a ASCII bunny holding a sign that says towards a boundless and messy immersive web. As immersive web-based experiences become more common, we can see an opportunity to subvert these entrenched power alignments. Search engine rankings begin to matter less with a web that is partially situated in time and space, a web that prioritizes presence. This gives us an opportunity to reorganize the power relationships of the web. But in order to do this, accessible and stable alternatives for content authoring have to be made numerous, and they have to prioritize messy and irresolute forms of expression. It is my hope that in the coming year, with WebKit indicating a move towards implementing the WebXR API, we can begin to proliferate these tools, and we can begin to make tutorials that anyone can follow, regardless of whether they have prior knowledge and regardless of whether they want to critique the powerful. I'm encouraged by the work of the people on this panel and many others, and I believe that it is possible that the immersive web can grow into something bright, rich, personal, slow, and always under construction. Thank you.
Thank you, Selja. All three of those presentations were amazing. I'm so excited about it. Thank you. So we're going to move into a little more conversation and back and forth. So if you are a participant and you have a question, you can put it in the chat, or you can use the raise hand feature to ask it directly. And I'll also ask some questions, and I know the panelists have some questions for each other too. So we'll just try to throw it all together and see what we can do in the last 15 minutes or so. I wanted to start actually with picking up on a question. I think it was Simon asked in the audience, and they directed it at Evelyn, but I'd like to open it up to everyone. So the question originally was, I'd love to hear more about the experience of teaching students with little or no VR or 3D experience to use hubs. But I would be also interested in hearing from any of the panelists in terms of your experience or thinking about bringing people that are sort of new to the space into it, and what the considerations are there in terms of access. And maybe Valencia, you have like a firsthand experience coming into the space yourself that you could speak a little bit more about, that you already kind of started to. So yeah, that's my question, like that kind of entry experience. How do you think about that? What have you learned? What are the considerations we might want to take with us going forward?
Yeah, for me, I'm still, that's the top question for me still. As I think of how am I bringing my community and other artists into the possibilities of creating for immersive web space. Right now, yeah, it's just been a big learning curve, and to be honest, I'm still very much dependent on my collaborators who who are 3D artists, technical artists. So I'm now exploring the different tools, and so I would like to pose the question back to like my fellow panelists for what are those? I mean, I started with just getting to understand how Hubs works and looking at Sketchfab, but as in terms of actual implementation, I'm still very dependent on my collaborators with more technical skills. Evelyn, I realized, you're talking about, you showed some amazing work of, the students who didn't have, VR background, but they made such amazing work. So I'm curious how they did that.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, those examples from the presentation today come from students that are in a class taught by a collaborative of mine called Joy Ko, who may or may not be on this call actually. And that class actually is a class that teaches the students some 3D modeling a little bit. So they're primed a little bit in the language of digital 3D assets already through that course. But then we are kind of giving them the VR experience as an option, and I'm not in the classroom there with them to really walk them through. And Joy also doesn't have a lot of experience or history with VR. So one thing I did was I actually made these things I call one-pagers, these PDFs that in one page try to get the students in the space. That's one page. Then the second page will be get the students to bring in one image and one 3D asset into the space. That's another page. So there's this way that I've tried to chunk the activities into these really kind of bite-sized things that just try to make it feel light and easy to do. And it was an experiment of mine this semester, it being remote, me not being in the classroom with the students, making these one-pagers, handing them off to Joy and seeing how it went. And I was kind of bracing for the emails, from the students, and they never came. So something must have worked a little bit. That's one strategy that I'm using at the moment.
Yeah, I've been using Mozilla Hubs specifically for students who want to host online art shows in lieu of being able to do it in person. And it's worked really well. I think that the documentation is fantastic and it's got an easy entry point. I think yeah, just in terms of like having these kinds of tools that are drag and drop and don't require coding skill in order to get something that you're that maybe shows off a 3D model or a 3D scan or something like this is super important. I'm also, trying to work in advocating for other kinds of tools that maybe do require a little bit of coding knowledge, but like demystifying them a little bit, be it ARJS, or which can do UV code tracking or marker tracking, or the P5XR if they do have access to a Google or an Android device. But I think in general, I want to see this kind of like drag and drop feature, this feeling that you can drag and drop kind of across many different content authoring platforms. I think that Mozilla has a certain look and a certain feel, but like this feeling that you could drag something in and make it appear in AR can really exist in many different authoring platforms.
Yeah, I found myself really wishing for just like code drop-ins that you could mix into hubs, and to like kind of break down that barrier between, like, it feels like there's some experiences where it's like, very plug and play, and then there's some where it's like code it yourself. And I'm always excited about when you can kind of like move from one to the other. I saw a question from Ada Rose Cannon. Did you still want to ask your question?
Oh, sure. So I was just thinking the WebXR device API has the capability of providing access to augmented reality or virtual reality, depending on what's available on the hardware. And I was wondering if that's a feature that anyone has experimented with or tried out, or whether you think it's even useful at all. Just like wondering people's thoughts about that.
I would like to take a shot at that if I may. This was something that I was really impressed by, kind of the far-reaching vision of the Immersive Web working group, and realizing that these, the technical and experiential qualities between these two mediums, VR and AR, is actually pretty similar. And I have, when developing this wrapper library, I have worked across both. I think that as it stands now, you can't really use the AR capacity unless you're on a modern Android phone running the latest Chrome. So there's pretty extreme limitations on that aspect of it. But in terms of being able to make something and then quickly switch from wearing a headset and being amongst it to seeing the background of your camera feed and imagining it in the space, that can be as simple as changing a couple lines of code, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, when it comes to interest, I would say from my perspective, it's definitely there still for handheld devices. If they, the support could be ramped up for low end devices with cameras on them. I think the interest is still there, because one thing from Microsoft I'm learning is the market for expensive headsets is a very slow thing that's going to be slow for a while, it sounds like. And AR on mobile devices is just like this area that wants to grow now, I think, and you'd want to be bringing it into schools. And so anyway, yeah, the interest is there from me.
Cool, thank you so much.
Thanks. And I was wondering, as you all were sort of developing your tools and testing these out, like what were, I guess if we're thinking about the WebXR spec or just WebXR in general, like what are the things that you hope to see? And I know, Stalgia, you spoke to this in a very like philosophical sense, but what does that, how does that play out, or what does that look like practically, or what are the barriers that you were coming up against as you were trying to develop things that you hope might unlock in the future? Sorry, and this could be also with the particular tools that you're using, or with the spec in general. You know, I'm interested in the whole kind of WebXR space.
Yeah, I think that I'm really happy with the spec and the kinds of conversations I've seen happening around the spec. And I think that there's this other layer that's maybe really important to us as tool makers or the end users, which is how that gets implemented by browser coders or hardware software developers, operating system software developers. I think that just the degree to which the kind of uneven rollout happened at that layer has further mystified the technology a little bit for people, and I guess that part's been kind of frustrating for me.
Ben, I think you wanted to make a comment about that.
Hi, yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Ben Irwin, and I'm very deep into researching WebXR. So I know a lot about the subject, and the answer that I would give to what would I expect from WebXR, what I want from it is adoption. I think that the fact that the Quest is really the only fully immersive device right now that gives us a glimpse of what this future of the web is a great start, and I'm really grateful for it. And all of the controversy surrounding Facebook and the Oculus merging of logins aside, all we really have right now is metachromium. I think it's essential that we as developers, we as artists, we as anybody interested in this space, do what we can to push the hardware manufacturers to be able to bring it in. We need HP to have an immersive web browser. We need Vive. We need all the manufacturers to have it be a standard implementation. And I think that what's holding this back is the walled garden app store distribution model. And that will always exist, and I don't have a problem with that. But the best way to distribute any content is over a URL. And what I want to see is a future where everybody can get their immersive content over a URL. That starts with VR support on the existing VR devices, and as AR glasses roll out, and as the AR component, the AR module of the WebXR specification rolls out, that gets baked into all of that. And I can't wait to see what Unreal's going to do with the Nebula app launcher and WebAR. But to boil it all down, adoption. That's what I'd like to see.
Thank you.
Can I
Yeah, go for it.
follow that up with a quick comment, just because that really resonates with me, the adoption thing. And I've only been at Microsoft for a year, and I'm in the CTO's office, which ostensibly would be a place where you can maybe help drive, at least from the corporate side, conversations around adoption and openness and working, with communities outside the company. But one thing that I'm finding interesting and kind of frustrating is that the discussion about adoption is something that's almost even a non-starter sometimes within the company because of politics alone. And so it's just so fascinating how slow the conversation is. And yeah.
That's going to be the fight.
Yeah, call it but yeah. Maybe.
And Valencia, did you have anything you wanted to add in terms of like things that barriers you've come up against, or things that you're hoping to see in the future with WebXR?
Well, from my point of view, like coming from kind of outside of this world, just like peeping in and trying to explore it, I think, just that the devices would be able to do this just like volumetric capture with just webcam. I see a couple experiments that involve like machine learning lately, but also I noticed like these capabilities like depth capabilities coming into our mobile devices. I was wondering, if there's anyone with thoughts about, where that can go and how, and how connected could it be to actually creating your own content? More people creating, from all walks of life, creating their own content with these capabilities.
Thank you. I know that I see a question from Boaz, but before we get there, I know that you all had some questions for each other too. So I wanted to open up this space if any of you wanted to ask any of those.
Mine have mostly been covered actually, and my last one was kind of overlaps with Boaz's, so I'm good.
Oh, well, maybe we want to go into that then, if you'd like. I'll take a sir. Okay, so Boaz was asking how you all are thinking about, or if you're thinking about XR as an assistive technology. Yes, I'm sorry, just scanning the comments here. Yeah, so how we're thinking about disability and access in terms of XR, if that's come up in your work or something that's that you're thinking about at all.
Yeah, that's a like a main research question for us now in terms of getting like this possibility, this technology out there for artists with disabilities to even approach creating volumetric performance in hubs. And I've been in conversation with a blind ballet dancer, and her comment was, well, she wouldn't really approach these spaces because they're not really built with her in mind. And so I think what I've been seeing is like, are these spaces actually accessible via screen reader, and what are the what needs to be maybe a new platform needs to be built completely. I wonder, but your thoughts to Stalgia and Evelyn and people on the call. Do you think maybe a whole new platform needs to be built, like from the ground up, integrating this assistive technologies?
I think that's a good question. Something I think about a lot is the work that's done on the P5 web editor to make it easier to work with for people that have vision disabilities, so that they can get kind of auditory feedback for what they're making graphically or what they're doing on the screen. And part of me is kind of like overly eager to see the moment where this can be spatialized, because I do think that a lot more helpful information can be conveyed through spatialized sound in immersive AR, XR contexts. And so I feel like there is this possibility for an authoring tool that uses the specific capacity of XR to make it easier to make things, actually.
Yeah, just to build to that, because as Selja mentioned, we've been kind of thinking about accessibility in general across the P5 library. And as I get deeper into that, I feel really excited about, like, I feel like there's a certain approach in some areas of the web where accessibility is treated as like just this kind of minimum set of guidelines that you need to meet to, be okay, or to say we check that box. And then as we've kind of gotten into the questions of, because P5 is primarily a visual coding tool, or that's where it started at least. So to get into like, how does that work for people that are not seeing the screen? And then that opens up many more questions about other kinds of disabilities. It really becomes this like a very creative question, where it starts to think about, what if you are working in multiple modalities at the same time? You're not just working with visuals, you're thinking about sound or spatialized sound. So I'm really excited about that conversation.
So
yeah, we're just about out of time.
Just wanted to mention a couple of WCC work in this space that may be interesting to you all. We ran a workshop last year on the topic of inclusive design for XR on the web, for the immersive web. which looked at many of these questions, both how to make the immersive web accessible and also how to use the immersive web technologies to create new accessibility experiences. And there is also ongoing work around the so-called XR user access requirements, which try to go in more depth into what it means to make an XR experience accessible. We are very far from having all the answers. And as you say, I think a lot of it also is not well-defined answers, but more questions of research and creativity. But yeah, that's a topic on which we would be very keen on getting more insight and input as you explore these spaces.
Thank you. And I think we should wrap up here unless any of the panelists or anyone else had anything they wanted to say as a closing comment. Good. Oh, go ahead. Boaz, were you about to say something?
Just to my friends at the W3C, I think the P5 community has a really remarkable way of thinking about accessibility and assistive technology that sort of, I think a few folks on the panel touched on today, but also as we think about this for XR and generally different modes of experiencing and interacting with content. I don't know what the links are, but there's really wonderful material out there and work from P5 to look for after the session.
Yeah, sorry, I wish I could dig them up right now, but it would take me a minute. I just wanted to say thank you to all the panelists. It was really amazing to see your work. It felt like there were such nice overlaps and then also things that were going in totally different directions. So just thank you for grounding us in the space today. And I think that's all. We'll be posting a recording and notes a little bit later, so you can catch up there too. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Stalgia and Evelyn and everyone.
You as well,
Thank
Valencia
you.
and Evelyn.
Yeah.